Robin Hood Radio presents Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens. Michele is a longtime journalist and herself is a published playwright of several theatrical works. She's a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and the Atlantic websites.
Well, I'm sure this is true in other cities, but in New York it often happens that you see two shows back to back that could not be less alike or more dissimilar. Is that what our president would call a double negative? Anyway, my thoughts are neither negative nor over-the-top positive about the creative ventures I saw this past week, but I always applaud good intentions, not to mention hard work, and frankly, right now, just about all dramatic distractions are welcome. Older shows are closing. Boys in the Band just ended its limited run, and Carousel will be shutting down. That surprised some, not me. It's a difficult musical, and it lost out on all those Tonys. Rehearsals for new ones opening the fall are in full swing. The usual hot tickets remain: Hamilton, Springsteen, Frozen, though you should not be dissuaded from going to those box offices before showtime. One never knows when spare tickets show up, especially in August. Now, as for on Broadway, well, two new ones open this week: Pretty Woman, based on the movie, and Getting the Band Back Together, or as they called themselves at one time, the Goys in the Band. This one is at the Belasco Theater, based apparently on the nostalgic memories of writer-producer Ken Davenport. His group was called the Barely Manilows. Well, at least that's what he told the audience before the performance I saw. I can tell you there is no need for caffeine before attending Getting the Band Back Together. I have rarely seen a show try so hard. The music and dancing are pretty much nonstop and generally loud. I have no idea if Davenport will rev up the audience before every performance. My guess is that someone will, because there's a bit that pays off later. One thing he said is, "You are about to see something very unique on Broadway these days, an original musical." Well, that's ironic for two reasons. One, he just picked up the Tony for Best Revival of a Musical for Once on This Island. And two, as entertaining and sort of funny as this show is, one thing it does not seem is original. School of Rock, Bandstand, and others have taken the idea of older buddies joining musical forces many years later for one of those Battle of the Bands. Just about every character in this show is a type, but they are winningly brought to life by Mitchell Jarvis, Jay Clates, Paul Whitty, and Manu Narayan. The fifth member of the new old band is one lone youngster played by Sawyer Nunes. As a 16-year-old, his choice is either to help out the old fogies, who, by the way, are just about 40, or take geometry for a third time. You see, one of the players is his math teacher. "But you always sucked in math," says a main character who has returned to organize the action. "I still do," comes the retort. You either laugh at the stuff or you don't. What works best are the facial expressions and the show's constant winking at everything from other Broadway shows to hashtags to sexual relationships. By the way, were it not for one of those, "I slept with your mom" being the refrain of a number called Bart's Confession, well, this would be the perfect family show to replace School of Rock, which is also closing. But that song and sidebar story kind of takes it out of safe territory. I guess you could also question the show's PC factor. An Orthodox Jewish wedding goes for broke. "I say mazel, you say tov" goes the refrain of Hava Nagila, but it's more humorous than not. The songs by Mark Allen are generally less than memorable, but several are clever, and a couple, "I Just Want Real" and "Life Without Parole," are downright touching. The biggest name in this show, I think, is probably Mary Lou Henner. Remember her from Taxi? She's the mother in question here. She looks great and occasionally finds a willing audience member to dance with. At intermission, she actually posed for selfies. Now, there is a lot of interactive stuff going on here, running up and down aisles, tossing a New Jersey newspaper to folks. That state, by the way, has a starring role in the musical. There are self-deprecating jokes aplenty. "We toured the whole tri-state area," brags the show's so-called villain, hilariously played by Brandon Williams. The contest is taking place in Western, Eastern, Central, Middlesex County. Well, you get the idea. This one is clearly going for the Jersey Boys' Bronx Tale, another production that just closed, ticket buyers. I say this with all the love and respect in my heart, but this is not the show for sophisticated Manhattanites. Though even they may snicker at the line, it's official. America's got no talent. Well, there is talent aplenty in this production, including director John Rando's work, though I might suggest he switched to decaf. Meanwhile, I got myself way downtown to Bleecker Street to the Sheen Center for Thought and Culture's Black Box Theater. There you can find a 2-hour piece called Pushkin. Having been to Russia recently, anything about that country, and in this case its most famous poet radical, piques my interest. Playwright Jonathan Leaf certainly shows us the many hypocrisies that colored Alexander Pushkin's life in the mid-19th century, leading to his early death at the age of 37. He was an abolitionist against serfdom, though he had a few himself. He worried about finances, yet he was a serious gambler. He scolded his wife's infidelity, though enjoyed plenty himself, including with her sister. All this, I am afraid, makes the play sound more interesting than it is, though I do think the problem here is the pacing, slow as can be, with too many wasted moments. The total opposite of getting the band back together, which is afraid to pause. Pushkin could benefit from being a 90-minute intermissionless, verse-filled work. There are some nice passages. Do you hate your country? There are days I am not proud of it. Which Russia am I writing about? But hey, how many writers can do what Tom Stoppard or David Ives consistently do well, mixing history with humor and, yes, even rhyme. The surprisingly large cast of Pushkin is all fine, though I confess leading man Ian Lasseter did not have the necessary energy or charisma, at least in my performance. When you are the title character, you better make us understand why everyone, from the czars to the housemaids to your enemies, fear and admire you. Anyway, it was one of those weeks in New York, Jill, from Moscow to New Jersey.
One of those weeks. But, again, I always looking ahead. My favorite thing. Has anything changed for that for you?
Let's see. Was there another name that came up? Kenny Lonergan, all big name playwrights.
No, the
Kenny
plays.
Lonergan.
We're good for plays. I'm thinking about musicals.
Oh, musicals. Kiss Me Kate is coming in the spring, I believe.
Again,
this one, I believe Kelly O'Hara, which will already make
that would be great.
That should do it.
I look for something, not that it's about me, but something that's like, oh wow, all Broadway. Something that gets that that feeling going.
I know.
This is irrespective of plays. I mean, plays are their own thing, and they should always, and there do look to be a good batch. But yes, I was just wondering on the musicals.
Front. Well, when people think Broadway, they think musicals. Let's face it. At this time last year, we were talking about Carousel and My Fair Lady and the excitement building. Carousel is already, like I said, closing. My Fair Lady is selling half-price tickets now. So that was a surprise. I just think the buzz hasn't been that great. And again, losing out on all those Tonys. You think that's not going to hurt something, but it does. Well, I'm trying to think if there are other musicals besides.
Would you like to hear an evil opinion that I'll just render?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I have this terrible habit. I stack newspapers just because I'm I don't seem to be able to read a newspaper on the day that it's there, but I'm always fascinated. Anyway, the paper of record has just been so snarky for the last years. And so it just, if you look, bearing in mind that I am old, and bearing in mind that I have read that so-called paper of record for years and years and years and years. It used to be when you read a review, you got a sense based on the context of the reviewer's experience, having seen everything.
Yeah.
And you got a sense of what it was, what the play or musical was, what was being attempted, and whether or not, in the reviewer's opinion, it succeeded.
Yeah. You're not finding that now?
No, what I'm finding is pretty much everything starts with I. This was what I thought.
Huh.
And it's through the lens, in addition, of the complete absence of context.
Mm-hmm.
Rephrase. absence of theatrical context, but certainly, since this is the first time that there's ever been racism or sexual abuse or misbehavior or malfeasance, and hopefully people who are listening can tell that I'm being facetious.
Right.
It does seem as though generally things are being viewed and therefore reviewed or presented through that lens.
New lens, you're saying.
And the situation with that is that it's like using a telephoto lens, if you will, when you should maybe be using, if not a wide-angle lens, then just a plain old lens.
Right. Well, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and I think in a funny way that's hurt My Fair Lady.
And it will have hurt Carousel as well.
It probably has. It probably has.
Because the joy... let me rephrase. The joy of entertainment is... it's almost the first thing that's extracted in any of these reviews. It's not like, hey, let's go and see this really fantastic performance, or this dancing is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't get past, again, my opinion, very difficult to get past the, this is how they did the scene for this, and because of this, you got to be super sensitive. It's like, all right, got it. But it's also, I don't want to say make-believe.
But sit back. Listen, that's kind of how I felt. That's why I was being kind. I think I was probably being kind than other reviews you will read this week, probably, about getting the band back together. Because, I know what it is, and I know what they're going for. And to be honest, if you let go a lot of this other stuff the baggage we come in with, it's fun. You have a good time. I found myself laughing out loud a lot. Am I going to tell my, sophisticated friends to go see it, who go to see every, Eugene O'Neill play? No. But I hope I haven't lost that, ability to see things different ways. It'll be interesting to see the reviews this week. You're not going to hear it from me because I have to leave town, so I'm not going to see Pretty Woman. It'll be interesting to read about that through because that one is...
have you seen it in previews? Because I will say that somebody who saw it was very happy with it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Somebody I talked to was less than happy. But they thought it was well done. They just didn't think the songs were very good. Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
But
you could look at that with very harsh eyes.
Right, exactly. But you could also just go, hey, how about a little levity? How about a little... It's to me, it's the difference between dense chocolate cake, flourless chocolate cake, and chocolate mousse.
If you're going to go for it, go for the dense.
Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens, produced in the studios of Robin Hood Radio, robinhoodradio.com.